The desert doesn't forgive mistakes. It swallows them whole, buries them under sand and silence, and moves on like nothing ever happened. Afghanistan knew this truth better than anywhere else on Earth. Bagram Air Base, 2021. 3 years ago, but it might as well have been yesterday. The compound was chaos wrapped in gunfire. Smoke choked the air, thick and black, turning midday into twilight. Explosions rattled the corrugated metal walls. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter screamed overhead, rotors beating the air like a desperate heartbeat. Alexandria Kincaid was 59 years old. 59, and she was running through hell with the same steady determination she'd carried for 38 years. Her medical pack bounced against her back. Her rifle hung at her side. Her eyes tracked everything, missed nothing. 38 years of this. 38 years of blood and sand and making impossible choices in impossible moments. She wasn't thinking about retirement, wasn't thinking about the small house waiting for her in San Diego, the one with the porch where she could finally sit and watch the ocean and pretend the nightmares would fade. She was thinking about Colonel Garrison Webb. Webb was down, 62 years old, career soldier, tough as leather and twice as stubborn. He'd taken shrapnel to the abdomen when the first IED detonated. Now he was bleeding out in a ditch behind a half-collapsed wall, and Alexandria was the only medic within 100 yards. She hit the dirt beside him, hands already moving. No hesitation, never hesitation. Hesitation killed people. "Colonel, stay with me." Webb's eyes found hers, gray eyes fading fast. "Reaper," he whispered, her call sign, the name she'd earned by keeping people alive when death was certain. "Leave me. Get the others out." "Shut up, sir, I'm working." Her hands pressed into his abdomen. Blood, hot and dark, welled between her fingers. Arterial bleeding, liver damage, maybe spleen. She couldn't tell without imaging, and they were 3 miles from the nearest field hospital. 3 miles might as well be 300. She grabbed her pack, pulled out gauze, packed the wound. Webb groaned. Good. Pain meant consciousness. Consciousness meant alive. "I need pressure," she muttered to herself. "Need to slow this bleed until evac arrives." That's when she heard it. A sound every soldier knows. A sound that turns blood to ice. The whistle of an incoming RPG. Her head snapped up. 200 yards, incoming, fast. Impact trajectory, their position. She had 3 seconds. 1 second. Her mind calculated angles, blast radius, options. 2 seconds. She made her choice. 3 seconds. She threw herself over Webb. The world exploded. Sound became light, became pressure, became nothing. Alexandria felt the impact lift her, twist her, slam her back down. She felt heat, impossible heat, and then something else. Something wrong. Something fundamental and terrible happening to her body. She tried to move her legs. They didn't respond. Tried again. Nothing. Her vision blurred, red at the edges, darkness creeping in. But her hands were still on Webb's wound, still pressing, still fighting. Even as consciousness slipped away like water through cupped palms, her fingers maintained pressure. 4 minutes. That's what the after-action report would say later. 4 minutes of unconscious pressure that kept Colonel Garrison Webb from bleeding out in a ditch in Afghanistan. 4 minutes that cost Alexandria Kincaid her legs. The darkness took her. 3 years later, San Diego breathed different. Salt air and car exhaust, and the constant low hum of urban life. No explosions, no gunfire, just the ordinary chaos of people living ordinary lives. Alexandria Kincaid rolled her wheelchair through the automatic doors of the Anchor Bar at 11:47 p.m. Late enough that the dinner crowd had gone home, early enough that the serious drinkers hadn't arrived yet. Perfect. She wore blue hospital scrubs, the fabric creased and worn from a 12-hour shift at San Diego Medical Center. Her blonde hair, now threaded with gray, was pulled back in a tight bun. No makeup, no jewelry except a simple silver watch on her left wrist. And in the front pocket of her scrubs, hidden from view, a small golden trident on a keychain, the only thing she'd kept from her old life. The bar was exactly what she needed: dim, quiet, anonymous. She navigated to the counter with practiced efficiency. The chair moved smoothly beneath her hands. 3 years of practice had made the wheelchair an extension of her body, not a limitation. She'd learned every angle, every motion, every way to make it work for her instead of against her. The bartender, a thick-necked man in his 40s with a beer gut and kind eyes, nodded at her. "Usual, ma'am?" "Please." He poured whiskey, 2 fingers, neat, and slid it across the scarred wood. She caught it without looking, raised it to her lips, and let the burn wash down her throat. Better. Not good. Not fixed. Just better. The bar mirror showed her reflection. 62 years old. Lines around her eyes, deeper now. Scars on her forearms, visible where her sleeves were rolled up. The face of someone who'd seen too much and survived anyway. Behind her reflection, she saw the rest of the bar. A couple in the corner, arguing quietly. An old man at a table near the jukebox, nursing a beer and staring at nothing. 3 younger men at a high-top table, laughing too loud, drinking too fast. Alexandria assessed them automatically. Threat assessment. Old habits. The 3 men, early 30s, late 20s. Tattoos crawling up forearms. Leather vests over t-shirts. Boots scuffed and heavy. Body language aggressive, territorial. One of them had prison ink, the crude kind done with contraband needles and homemade ink. Not military, not discipline, just dangerous in the way that bored, angry men were always dangerous. She turned back to her drink. Not her problem, not anymore. But then she felt it, the shift in attention, the way the air changed when predators picked out prey. One of them had noticed her. "Yo!" The voice cut through the low music. "Check it out." Alexandria didn't turn, didn't react, just took another sip of whiskey and kept her eyes on the mirror. The tallest one stood up, tattoos on his neck, a scar through his left eyebrow. This was Colt Brennan, though Alexandria didn't know his name yet. 32 years old, 6 months out of a 3-year stint at Corcoran State Prison. He walked toward her, not hurrying, taking his time, making sure she knew he was coming. Colt stopped too close, invading space, establishing dominance. "Well, damn," he said, voice carrying across the bar. "Check out Grandma in the chair." The bartender's hand paused, mid-wipe on a glass. Alexandria set her whiskey down slowly, very slowly, each movement deliberate. She didn't turn around, didn't give him the satisfaction. "Move along," she said quietly. Colt laughed. "Did she just tell me to move along? Sweetheart, I don't think you're in a position to give orders." The second man joined him. Riker Maddox, 29, with the kind of nervous energy that turned violent fast. He circled behind Alexandria's chair, boots scraping deliberately on the floor. "Damn," Riker said, voice low and crude. "Bet you're real good with your hands though, huh? Shame about the legs." The third man, Finn O'Hara, 26, stayed at the table. He looked uncomfortable, kept glancing at the door, but didn't say anything. Didn't stop them. Alexandria's fingers tightened once around her glass, then relaxed. She'd been here before. Different country, different language, same essential situation. Men who mistook silence for weakness. Men who thought power came from intimidation. She knew how this worked. "I asked you nicely," she said, still not turning. "Move along." Colt reached out and grabbed the back of her wheelchair. Not hard, just enough to rock it slightly, just enough to show he could. Or what? That's when Alexandria turned. She moved in her chair, smooth and controlled, until she faced him directly. Her eyes met his. Level. unflinching. "Don't touch my chair." Something in her voice made Colt pause, just for a second. Something that didn't match the gray hair and the hospital scrubs in the wheelchair. Something that came from 38 years of staring down much more dangerous men in much more dangerous places. But the moment passed. Riker laughed behind her, and Colt's bravado came back. "Or what?" he repeated. "You gonna stand up and fight me?" "Guys," Finn's voice from the table, uncertain. "Maybe we should just—" "Shut up," Riker snapped. "Grandma here needs to learn some respect." He reached down toward the front pocket of Alexandria's scrubs. She saw it coming, moved to block him, but he was faster. His fingers closed on something metal in her pocket and pulled. The keychain came free. The small, golden trident caught the bar light, spinning on its chain. "The hell is this?" Riker held it up. "Some kind of pitchfork?" Colt squinted at it. "Looks like military cosplay crap." "Give it back." Alexandria's voice was very quiet now, very controlled. "Make me." Across the bar, the old man at the table set his beer down. Hard. Alexandria hadn't paid attention to him before, hadn't marked him as significant. But now she saw him stand, saw the way he moved, the way his posture changed. He was 71 years old, gray-haired and weathered, with a limp that spoke of old injuries never quite healed. But his eyes, when they found the trident in Riker's hand, went sharp and bright and very, very focused. The old man's name was Thaddeus Garrison. Thaddeus Ironside Garrison, though nobody had called him that in 20 years. Force Recon Marine, Gulf War veteran, 3 tours in places that officially didn't exist. And 20 years ago, in a street firefight in Fallujah, a combat medic named Alexandria Kincaid had pulled his son out of a burning Humvee and kept him breathing long enough to reach a field hospital. Thaddeus knew that trident, knew what it meant, knew who carried them. He walked to the bar, paid his tab with cash, and walked out into the night without a word. Inside, Colt was still holding the trident, grinning. "Come on, Grandma. What's it gonna take for you to relax?" "You should smile more," Riker added, nudging her chair again. "Be grateful someone's paying attention to you." Alexandria looked at them, really looked, saw the desperation beneath the bravado, saw the emptiness in their eyes, the kind that came from not knowing what else to be except mean. She'd seen that look before, in young soldiers fresh to war, trying to prove something to themselves. "Last warning," she said. "Give me my keychain and walk away." Colt leaned down, bringing his face level with hers. "And if I don't?" The bartender was reaching for his phone now. The couple in the corner had stopped arguing and were watching, wide-eyed. Alexandria didn't answer, just held Colt's gaze and waited. Outside, Thaddeus Garrison stood in the parking lot. He reached into his jacket and pulled out something that looked like a small metal whistle. But it wasn't a whistle. It was something else. Something from a different time. A military signal device, the kind forward operating bases used in the field when radios were compromised. He put it to his lips and blew. No sound came out. Not one humans could hear anyway. But the frequency carried across the parking lot, across the street, across the entire 2-mile radius of this neighborhood. And in 7 different locations, 7 different men heard it and knew exactly what it meant. Inside the bar, Colt was still leaning close to Alexandria, still grinning, still holding her keychain. "You know what I think?" he said. "I think you need to learn—" The door opened. Not dramatically, not with a crash, just opened, smooth and controlled. And a man walked in. Then another. Then another. 8 men in total, moving like water, flowing into the space, filling it without crowding. They spread out naturally, instinctively, taking positions that covered every angle, every exit, every threat vector. They weren't wearing uniforms, just regular clothes, jeans and t-shirts and work boots. But something about them made the air change, made the temperature drop. Colt straightened up, suddenly uncertain. "The hell is this?" The man at the front was younger than the others, 45 maybe, broad shoulders, gray creeping into his dark hair, eyes that had seen combat and remembered every detail. Commander Knox Ashford, Navy SEAL, active duty, currently assigned to Naval Special Warfare Command at Coronado. He didn't look at Colt, didn't look at Riker or Finn. He looked at Alexandria. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "you okay?" Alexandria's jaw tightened. She recognized Knox. Of course she did. She'd trained him 15 years ago, back when he was a fresh-faced kid trying to make it through combat medic certification. "I didn't call for help," she said. "I know, ma'am. We came anyway." Thaddeus Garrison walked in behind the others, moving slow but steady. He didn't say anything, just took his position near the door and crossed his arms. The other 6 arranged themselves throughout the bar. Not threatening, not aggressive, just present. Boone Everett, 68, Army Ranger sniper with a confirmed kill count that was still classified. He stood near the jukebox, hands loose at his sides, eyes tracking everything. Wyatt McAllister, 70, Navy SEAL from the Gulf War era. He'd lost 3 fingers on his right hand to an IED and learned to shoot just as well with the other 7. Sterling Blackwood, 73, in a wheelchair of his own. Radio operator, comms specialist, the man who'd kept entire battalions coordinated under fire. His chair was custom, built for mobility and speed. Magnus Drummond, 69, EOD specialist who'd defused more bombs than he could count. His hands trembled slightly now, nerve damage from one that almost got him, but his mind was still sharp as a blade. Dash Sullivan, 67, former helicopter pilot grounded after a crash in Iraq, left him with vertigo. He walked with a cane now, but his tactical mind was unchanged. Flint Rourke, 66, pararescue jumper who'd pulled wounded soldiers from impossible situations for 30 years. Retired 5 years ago, but the instincts never left. 7 old men, veterans, survivors, every one of them over 65, every one of them looking like they'd wandered in from a retirement home. Except their eyes. Their eyes were young and hard and absolutely certain. Riker looked at them and laughed. "What is this, a convention?" Nobody answered. Colt tried to recover his swagger. "This ain't your business, old-timers. Move along before someone gets hurt." Knox finally looked at him, really looked, and Colt's grin faltered. "Put the keychain down," Knox said quietly. "Step away from the lady and leave." "Or what?" Riker stepped forward, chest out. "You geriatric motherfuckers gonna—" He didn't finish the sentence. Magnus moved. 70 years old, trembling hands, beer gut pushing at his shirt. Moved faster than Riker could process. 1 second Riker was standing. The next he was on the floor, arm twisted behind his back, Magnus's knee in his spine. "Or that," Magnus said calmly. Colt swung at Knox. Big, looping right hand, telegraphed from a mile away. Knox didn't block it, just moved his head 3 inches. The fist whistled past his ear. Then Knox's hand closed on Colt's wrist, twisted, and suddenly Colt was airborne. He hit the floor hard. Knox followed him down, knee on chest, hand controlling both of Colt's arms with mechanical precision. "Don't move," Knox said. Not a threat, just information. Finn, the youngest, started to stand up from the table, started to reach for something at his belt. Boone was there before Finn's hand moved 6 inches. Just there somehow, like he'd teleported. His hand rested on Finn's shoulder, light, gentle. "Don't," Boone said quietly. Finn froze, looked into Boone's eyes, saw something there that made him sit back down very slowly. Total elapsed time, 15 seconds. 3 men neutralized, no punches thrown in anger, no wasted motion, just efficiency born from decades of practice. The bartender stood frozen, phone still in his hand. The couple in the corner had pressed themselves against the wall. Alexandria sat in her wheelchair, watching, saying nothing. Knox looked up at her from his position on top of Colt. "Ma'am, we apologize for the interruption. These gentlemen were leaving." "I didn't need your help," Alexandria said. "I know, ma'am, but we owed you. Several of us owe you." Thaddeus stepped forward then, limping but steady. "Kid," he said to Alexandria, using the old military term of endearment that transcended age. "You saved my son, Fallujah, 2004. He was trapped in that Humvee. You pulled him out while the whole street was on fire." Alexandria's face didn't change. "I was doing my job. You saved his life. I've been looking for you for 20 years, to say thank you. You don't owe me anything. We all do." Wyatt spoke up from his position near the bar. He held up his right hand, showing the missing fingers. "Ramadi, 2006. IED took my hand off. You kept me from bleeding out. Tied the tourniquet while taking fire." Sterling wheeled his chair forward. "You stabilized my spine after the convoy rollover. Bakuba, 2007. I can still move my arms because of you." One by one they spoke, each of them, each with a story, each with a moment when Alexandria Kincaid had stood between them and death and refused to let death win. "Magnus, you disarmed the bomb that was rigged to my vest. Dash, you kept me breathing after the helicopter went down. Flint, you taught me half of what I know about field medicine. Knox, you trained me 15 years ago. You were the toughest instructor I ever had, and the reason I'm still alive." The bar was silent. Even Colt and Riker had stopped struggling, listening despite themselves. Alexandria looked at each of them. These men who'd tracked her down, who'd kept watch over her for 3 years without her knowing. These men who carried her face in their memories alongside their own ghosts. "I didn't do anything special," she said quietly. "I was a medic. That was my job." "Ma'am," Thaddeus's voice was gentle, "you saved 247 lives in 38 years of service. We counted. We compared notes. 247 soldiers who came home because of you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. Opened it. A list of names handwritten, both sides of the page. Names and dates and locations. "These are just the ones we could confirm," he said. "The ones who remember. The ones who survived long enough to tell someone." Alexandria stared at the list, saw names she recognized, names she'd forgotten, names that brought back moments she tried to bury. 247 lives. 247 reasons why 8 men had just walked into a bar to protect her from 3 drunk idiots. "You can't do this," Alexandria said. "You can't just follow me around. I'm retired. I'm done." "We're not following you, ma'am," Knox said. He'd released Colt now, was standing, brushing off his jeans. "We're just nearby, in case you need us." "I don't need anyone." "We know. That's what makes you worth protecting." Alexandria closed her eyes, breathed, tried to find the words to make them understand that she didn't want this, didn't want their gratitude or their protection or their memory of who she used to be. But when she opened her eyes, she saw something else. She saw Colt, still on the floor, staring up at her with an expression that had shifted from anger to something like shock. Saw Riker, breathing hard, looking at the old men around him with new eyes. Saw Finn, frozen at his table, beginning to understand that he'd made a terrible mistake. Knox turned to them. His voice changed. Not loud, but it carried. Command voice, the kind that made you stand up straighter without thinking. "You 3 need to understand something," he said. "You need to understand who you just mocked." He gestured to Alexandria. "This woman is Alexandria Kincaid, combat medic, 75th Ranger Regiment, 38 years of service." Colt started to say something. Knox's hand moved, just slightly, and Colt's mouth shut. "She served in the Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan. She saved 247 confirmed lives under combat conditions. She lost her legs 3 years ago shielding Colonel Garrison Webb during a coordinated attack on Bagram Air Base. The bar was absolutely silent now. Even the music seemed to have faded. Even unconscious, Knox continued, she maintained pressure on Colonel Webb's arterial bleed for 4 minutes. The after-action report confirmed it. She was knocked out by the blast, but her hands never stopped working. Muscle memory, training so deep it operated without conscious thought. He looked at each of the 3 men in turn. Colonel Webb is now a 3-star general. He's alive because of her. And every single man in this bar, Knox gestured to the 7 veterans around them, is alive because of her. Thaddeus spoke up, his voice rough with emotion. She pulled my son from a burning vehicle. Boone, she extracted me from a collapsed building. Wyatt, she amputated my crushed hand in the field to save my life. Magnus, she defused a bomb strapped to my chest. Dash, she kept me breathing after my lungs collapsed. Flint, she trained an entire generation of medics. Sterling, she never left anyone behind, not once in 38 years. The words hung in the air like smoke. Riker, still on the floor with Magnus's knee in his back, made a sound. Not quite a sob, just air escaping, taking his bravado with it. "We didn't know," he whispered. Alexandria's voice cut through, cold, sharp. "That's the problem." Everyone looked at her. She leaned forward in her wheelchair, eyes moving from Colt to Riker to Finn. "You didn't know, and you didn't think it mattered. You saw a woman older than you in a wheelchair, and you decided that gave you permission." Silence. "You didn't wonder about her story, didn't consider that maybe, just maybe, there was a reason she looked the way she did, that maybe she'd earned every gray hair and every scar." She picked up her whiskey, drained it, set the glass down with a click. "The world is full of people like me," she said. "People who did hard things in hard places, who carry their history in their bones. And you'll never know who they are because they don't advertise it. They don't need your respect because they already earned it from people who mattered." Colt's face had gone pale. "Ma'am, I don't want your apology," Alexandria cut him off. "I want you to remember this moment. Remember that you don't know people's stories, and that your assumptions say more about you than they ever will about anyone else." She looked at Knox. "Let them go." Knox hesitated. "Ma'am?" "Let them go, Commander. They're not the enemy. They're just stupid, and stupid can be fixed." Knox nodded, released Colt. Magnus let Riker up. Boone stepped back from Finn. The 3 men stood slowly, rubbing wrists, avoiding eye contact. Alexandria held out her hand. "My keychain." Riker fumbled it from his pocket, handed it over. The golden trident gleamed in her palm. "Now leave," she said. They left, fast, not running, but close. The door swung shut behind them. The bartender exhaled for what felt like the first time in 5 minutes. The couple in the corner grabbed their coats and left without paying their tab. And Alexandria sat there, keychain in her palm, surrounded by 8 men who'd walked through fire for her without being asked. Knox pulled up a chair, sat down carefully, respectful of her space. "Ma'am, there's something you need to know. I'm 62 years old, Commander. I've heard a lot of things I needed to know. Most of them were bad news. This is bad news." She looked at him, really looked, saw the tension in his shoulders, the weight he was carrying. "Go ahead. General Webb is dying, stage 4 cancer, pancreatic. He has maybe 2 weeks left." Something shifted in Alexandria's chest. Not surprise. Webb had been living on borrowed time since Afghanistan. They both knew it. "He wants to see you," Knox continued, "and he has a mission. I'm retired. I know, but there's a situation, a ranger unit, compromise mission, insider threat. A young private is being hunted. Someone's trying to kill him. Call the MPS, call JAG, call whoever handles that." "General Webb doesn't trust anyone under 50, Knox said. "The corruption goes too deep. Too many young officers involved. He needs people he can trust. People who remember what the oath means. Alexandria's hand closed around the Trident keychain. Why me? Because the private they're hunting is 19 years old, and he's the grandson of Master Sergeant Daniel Reed. You remember Reed? She did, instantly. Firefight outside Fallujah, 2003. Reed had taken 3 rounds covering their retreat. She'd worked on him for 20 minutes while bullets chewed up the sand around them. He'd lived long enough to make it to the field hospital, long enough to see the birth of his son, not long enough to meet his grandson. The kid's name is Sawyer Reed, Knox said, and someone tried to inject succinylcholine into his IV line at Naval Medical Center 3 days ago. He's being moved to a secure location. General Webb wants you to keep him alive until we can identify the threat. I'm 62 years old. I'm in a wheelchair. I can't protect anyone. Thaddeus spoke up from behind her. You don't need to run, kid. You just need to think. And nobody thinks better under pressure than you. Alexandria looked around at all of them. These men who'd come when called, who dropped everything because an old signal from an old Marine told them someone needed help. If I do this, she said slowly, I'm in command. My rules, my decisions. Yes, ma'am, Knox said immediately. And you, she pointed at Thaddeus, then swept her finger to include all 7 of the older men. You're not soldiers anymore. You're civilians. You can walk away right now and no one will judge you. Boone smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Ma'am, with respect, we stopped being civilians the day we took the oath. Some things don't wash off. We're old, Wyatt added. Not dead, not useless, not done. Sterling wheeled his chair forward. Besides, when's the last time you saw a 73-year-old man in a wheelchair get to feel dangerous? This is the most fun I've had in years. Despite everything, Alexandria felt the ghost of a smile touch her lips. You're all insane. That's why we get along, ma'am. She looked down at the trident in her palm. Gold, worn smooth from years of handling. A symbol of service, of sacrifice, of a life spent standing between others and death. She'd thought that life was over, thought retirement meant peace, quiet, fading away with dignity. But looking at these 8 men, seeing their certainty, their readiness, their absolute refusal to let her face this alone, she understood something. Rangers didn't retire, they just found new missions. Alexandria closed her hand around the trident, looked up at Knox. When do we start? The drive to Naval Medical Center took 23 minutes. Knox drove. Alexandria sat in the passenger seat, watching San Diego blur past the window. The others followed in 2 separate vehicles, maintaining tactical spacing without discussing it. Old habits. She hadn't been inside a military facility since her discharge 3 years ago. Hadn't wanted to. The smell alone would bring it all back. Antiseptic and blood and fear and the particular brand of chaos that came with trying to save lives under impossible conditions. But here she was. Because a 19-year-old kid with his grandfather's eyes was in danger, and apparently she was the only one General Webb trusted to keep him breathing. Tell me about the mission, she said. Knox kept his eyes on the road. Private Sawyer Reed was part of a reconnaissance unit operating near the Pakistani border. Routine intelligence gathering. Should have been a milk run. Nothing's routine near the Pakistani border. No, ma'am, but this was supposed to be. They had good intel, clear objectives, minimal risk exposure. He paused. Someone changed the coordinates. Alexandria's jaw tightened. How far off? 3 miles, just enough to put them directly into an ambush zone. Reed's unit walked into a kill box. 5 men went in, only Reed came out. The mathematics of betrayal. Clean and simple and absolutely lethal. Inside job, she said. Has to be. The coordinate change happened at command level. Someone with access to operational planning. Someone who knew exactly where to redirect them for maximum casualties. And Reed? Took 2 rounds, shoulder and abdomen. He made it back to the FOB, barely. Medevac to Landstuhl, then stateside. He was recovering at Naval Medical when someone tried to finish the job. Knox pulled into the medical center parking lot. The building rose against the night sky, windows glowing with that particular institutional fluorescent that never really turned off. The nurse found the syringe in his IV port, Knox continued. Succinylcholine. Untraceable if it works. Looks like cardiac arrest. Clean, professional, someone with medical training. How did Reed notice? He didn't. He woke up, felt wrong, hit the call button. The would-be killer ran when the nurse responded. We have him on security footage, but his face was obscured. Military bearing, though. Moved like someone with training. They parked. The other two vehicles pulled in nearby. 8 men climbed out, moving like a unit despite the decades since any of them had worn a uniform together. Alexandria rolled herself toward the entrance. The automatic doors opened, and the smell hit her immediately. Hospital. Medical center, the place where life and death negotiated terms. Her hands tightened on the wheelchair rims. Knox noticed. "Ma'am, you okay?" "Fine, let's move." They took the elevator to the 4th floor, the oncology wing, not where Reed was being held, but where they needed to go first. General Garrison Webb's room was at the end of the hall. 2 MPs stood outside his door. They straightened when they saw Knox, then noticed Alexandria and the 7 older men behind her. Confusion flickered across their young faces, but they said nothing. Knox had clearance. That was enough. Inside, the machines beeped their steady rhythm. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation. All the numbers that measured what was left of a life. General Garrison Webb lay in the bed, looking smaller than Alexandria remembered. 65 years old, but the cancer had aged him 20 years. His skin was gray, stretched tight over bones that seemed too prominent. An IV dripped morphine into his arm. Another bag hung nearby, clear fluid that was probably just keeping him hydrated at this point. His eyes were closed. Alexandria rolled closer, stopped at the bedside. "General," she said quietly. Webb's eyes opened, gray eyes, faded now, but still sharp, still aware. He saw her, and something that might have been a smile touched his lips. "Reaper," he whispered, "you came. You gave me an order, sir. I never disobeyed one yet." Webb's hand moved slightly on the blanket. Alexandria reached out, took it. His fingers were cold, fragile as bird bones. "Liar," Webb said. "You disobeyed my order in Afghanistan. I told you to leave me." "I didn't hear that order clearly, sir. Radio interference." This time the smile was real. Brief, but real. "Thank you for that interference." They sat in silence for a moment. The machines beeped. Outside the window, San Diego lived its ordinary life. "Knox told me about the boy," Alexandria said finally. "Daniel Reed's grandson. Sawyer, good kid. Reminds me of his grandfather." Webb's breathing was labored. Each word cost him. "They're hunting him, Reaper. Not random, not opportunistic, systematic. Someone wants him dead badly enough to risk exposure." "Why?" "Because he saw something. During the ambush, before his unit was hit, he saw the coordinates being transmitted. He has proof that the mission was compromised from inside." Alexandria's mind worked through the implications. He can identify who changed the orders. More than that, he downloaded the transmission logs before the ambush, has them on a data stick, names, times, the whole chain of communication. Proof of conspiracy reaching into Pentagon-level procurement. Jesus. $3 billion in fraudulent defense contracts, 52 people involved that we know of. Generals, congressional staffers, private contractors. They've been running this for 15 years. Webb coughed, a wet sound that made the machines spike. If Reed testifies, it all comes down. If he dies, the evidence chain breaks. No witness, no case. Where is he now? Safe house, 20 miles east of here, old ranch property, abandoned, perfect for keeping a low profile. Webb squeezed her hand weakly. But they'll find him eventually. They have resources, time, patience. I need you to keep him alive until we can bring this into the open. Why not just bring him in? Full protection detail, JAG involved, make it public. Because we don't know how deep this goes. Who's compromised? How many people are on their payroll? Webb's eyes found hers. I trust maybe 10 people in the entire chain of command. You're looking at one of them. The 7 men outside that door, I trust. Knox, I trust. Everyone else is suspect. Alexandria nodded slowly. You want old guard, people who remember when the oath meant something. People who aren't looking for their next promotion or their next contract. People who've already given everything and have nothing left to prove. He coughed again. People like you. I'm 62 years old, General. I'm in a wheelchair. I can't fight. I don't need you to fight. I need you to think, to strategize, to keep a scared 19-year-old kid from making a stupid decision that gets him killed. Webb's grip tightened slightly. I need you to be what you've always been, the steadiest hand in the room when everything's falling apart. Outside, someone laughed in the hallway. Normal sound, normal life, so far removed from this conversation about conspiracy and murder. How long do you have? Alexandria asked quietly. Doctor says 2 weeks, maybe less. Webb's eyes were clear now, focused. I won't see the end of this, Reaper, but you will. You'll make sure that boy lives to testify. You'll make sure his grandfather's sacrifice meant something. Daniel Reed saved my life once, Alexandria said. Covered our retreat in Fallujah. Took 3 rounds doing it. I know, that's why I'm asking you. Because you understand debt. You understand what we owe the ones who came before. Alexandria looked at Webb, really looked, saw past the cancer, past the gray skin and failing body, and saw the man who'd led soldiers through hell for 40 years. The man she'd thrown herself over in Afghanistan, because losing him would have meant losing a piece of what made the fight worth fighting. I'll keep him safe, she said. I know you will. Webb's eyes started to close, the morphine pulling him under. But before sleep took him, he whispered one more thing. There's something else, something Knox doesn't know yet. Alexandria leaned closer. The insider, the one who changed the coordinates. Webb's voice was barely audible. It's someone high level, someone with access to everything. And I think they know you're involved now. Let them know. Reaper, they'll come for you too. Then they'll learn what 247 people already know. I'm hard to kill. Webb smiled, actually smiled. Then sleep took him. Alexandria rolled back from the bed. Knox was waiting outside with the others. He tell you everything? Knox asked. Enough. Let's go see the kid. The drive to the safe house took them east, away from the coast, into the dry hills where San Diego started to remember it was built on desert. The ranch house sat at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by scrub brush and silence. 2 Humvees were parked outside. 4 Marines stood guard, young and alert, hands near their weapons. Knox showed identification. The Marines relaxed slightly but didn't move from their positions. Inside, the house was sparse. Old furniture, dust in the corners, the particular emptiness of a place that hadn't been lived in for years. But it was secure. Single story, good sight lines, only 2 entrances. Private Sawyer Reed sat on a couch in what used to be a living room. 19 years old, sandy hair, blue eyes that were too old for his face now. His left arm was in a sling. Bandages showed under his t-shirt where the abdominal wound was still healing. He stood when they entered, military reflex, then saw Alexandria's wheelchair and didn't know what to do with his posture. At ease, Private, Alexandria said. Sit down before you tear your stitches. Reed sat. His eyes moved from Alexandria to the 7 old men filing in behind her. Confusion was clear on his face. Private Reed, Knox said, this is Alexandria Kincaid. She's going to be coordinating your security detail. Reed looked at Alexandria, at the wheelchair, at her gray hair and hospital scrubs. No offense, ma'am, But how is a nurse in a wheelchair supposed to protect me? The question hung in the air. Not hostile, just honest confusion from a kid who'd watched his entire unit die and was still processing the fact that he was alive. Alexandria rolled closer, stopped a few feet away. Let me ask you something, Private. How many gunfights have you been in? One, ma'am. The ambush. How many people have you kept alive under fire? None, ma'am. How many people have tried to kill you specifically? I don't know. Maybe 20 in the ambush. One in the hospital. Alexandria nodded. I've been in 47 gunfights. I've kept 247 people alive under combat conditions. And I've survived more people trying to kill me than I can count. She paused. So to answer your question, Private, I'm going to keep you alive by being smarter than the people hunting you. And these 7 men behind me, they're going to help because they owe me their lives. Reed looked at the old men again, saw them differently now, saw past the gray hair and the wrinkles and the wheelchairs. You're all military, he said slowly. Were, Thaddeus corrected. Technically, we're all retired, but some things don't retire. Boone moved to the window, checking sight lines with the practiced eye of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. Wyatt walked the perimeter of the room, marking cover points, angles of attack. Sterling wheeled himself to what would be their communication center, already assessing what equipment they'd need. Magnus examined the doors and windows, mentally cataloging where he'd place explosives if he were attacking. Dash and Flint started discussing medical supplies, inventory, what they'd need if things went bad. They moved like a unit, like they'd done this before, which they had, just decades ago in different deserts under different flags. Reed watched them, and understanding started to dawn. How old are you all? He asked. Old enough to know better, Wyatt said. Young enough not to care. Alexandria rolled to the couch, positioned herself where she could see both entrances. Private, I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. The mission brief, the coordinates, what you saw, who you told, everything. Reed nodded, started talking. The mission had been simple. Intelligence gathering near a known Taliban supply route. They were supposed to observe, record, report. Ghost in, ghost out. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. But when they reached the coordinates, nothing matched the terrain map. They were 3 miles off course, in a valley with only one exit. That's when the shooting started. Reed had been running communications. He'd seen the coordinate transmission on his tablet just before the ambush, saw that someone had changed them remotely, overriding their original orders. He'd grabbed screenshots, transferred them to a data stick. Then all hell broke loose. 4 men died in the first 60 seconds. Reed took 2 rounds but kept moving, made it out of the valley, ran 3 miles back to friendly territory bleeding and half-conscious. At the FOB, he'd told his commanding officer about the coordinates, showed him the data stick. 2 days later, he was medevac to Germany. 3 days after that, someone tried to kill him in his hospital bed. Who knew you had the data stick? Alexandria asked. My CO, the doctors who treated me, maybe the MPs who transported me stateside. Where's the stick now? Reed reached into his pocket, pulled out a small black USB drive. Right here. Give it to me. He hesitated. Ma'am, this is evidence. I can't just... Private, you're going to be dead evidence if you keep carrying that thing around like a target on your chest. Give it to me. I'll make sure it gets where it needs to go. Reed handed it over. Alexandria examined it. Standard military issue encrypted drive. She passed it to Sterling. Can you crack this? Sterling turned it over in his hands. Maybe. Give me a few hours and the right equipment. Do it. We need to know exactly what we're protecting. Knox's phone buzzed. He checked it and his face went hard. We've got movement. Security cameras picked up 2 vehicles on the access road. No plates, tinted windows. They stopped half a mile out. How many? Alexandria asked. Can't tell. At least 6 people, maybe more. The room shifted. The old men stopped their individual assessments and converged. moving into defensive positions without being told. Thaddeus took point at the front window, Boone at the back. Wyatt and Magnus flanked the door. Dash and Flint positioned themselves to cover Reed. Sterling pulled out a tablet, accessing the security camera feeds Knox had mentioned. Alexandria rolled to the center of the room where she could see everything, command everything. "How long until they reach the house?" she asked. Knox checked his phone again. "If they're coming in on foot, maybe 20 minutes. Then we have time." Alexandria looked at the 4 young Marines who'd been guarding the house. "You 4, get out. Leave through the back. Go now." The corporal in charge shook his head. "Ma'am, we have orders to—" "Your orders just changed. If you stay, you're either going to die or you're going to have to kill American citizens. Because whoever's coming isn't Taliban. They're contractors, private military. And I'm not putting that on your conscience." She pointed to the door. "Go. That's an order." The corporal looked at Knox. Knox nodded. "She's right. This is off book now. You were never here." The 4 Marines left through the back door, moving fast and quiet. Their Humvees started up and drove away, taking the back route toward the highway. Now it was just them. 7 old men, 1 old woman, 1 active-duty SEAL, and a wounded 19-year-old private. Against however many were coming. "Sterling, what do you see?" Alexandria asked. Sterling's fingers moved across his tablet. 6 heat signatures, moving tactical, professional spacing. They're armed, long rifles, probably suppressed. Assessment? Former military, maybe contractors, definitely trained. Alexandria nodded. "Thaddeus, can we hold this position?" Thaddeus surveyed the room. "For a while, but this house wasn't built for defense. Too many windows, thin walls, no fallback positions. Then we don't defend, we evacuate." Knox looked at her. "Where?" "They've probably got the roads covered." "Then we go off-road. There's a gully about 200 yards north. Runs for half a mile before it hits the highway. We can move through it unseen." "How do you know that?" "Because I looked at satellite maps of this area before we drove out here. Always know the terrain, Commander. First rule of survival." Boone spoke up from his position. "I can cover the retreat. Give you 10 minutes. "No." Alexandria's voice was firm. "Nobody stays behind. We all leave or none of us leave." "Ma'am, someone needs to slow them down." "Then we slow them down together and leave together." She looked around at all of them. "I didn't spend 38 years keeping people alive just to lose someone now because they wanted to play hero. We're all walking out of here. End of discussion." The old men exchanged glances. Something passed between them. Understanding. Agreement. These weren't young soldiers eager to prove themselves. These were old men who'd already proven everything. And if Alexandria Kincaid said they were all surviving this, then they were all surviving this. "Magnus," Alexandria said, "can you rig something to buy us time?" Magnus smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Ma'am, I can make this entire house a party favor if you give me 10 minutes. "You've got 5. Make it count." Magnus pulled materials from his pack. Stuff he'd brought without being asked, because old habits died hard. An EOD specialist never stopped seeing the world in terms of what could explode. While he worked, the others prepared for movement. Dash helped Reed to his feet. The kid was pale, sweating. The exertion was costing him. "Can you run?" Dash asked. "I can do whatever I have to do." "Good answer." Flint checked Reed's bandages. "He's bleeding through. The abdominal wound reopened." "Can he make it 200 yards?" Alexandria asked. "If he wants to live, yes. Then he wants to live." Sterling had 3 tablets now, commandeered from the Marines, running security feeds and heat signatures and GPS tracking all at once. "They're 15 minutes out," he reported. "Still coming tactical. They know we're here." "Good," Alexandria said. "Let them come. They're about to learn an important lesson." "What lesson?" "That old doesn't mean slow. It means experienced. And experience knows when to run." Magnus finished his work, simple but effective. Pressure plates on the doors, tripwires on the windows. Nothing lethal, just loud and bright and disorienting. Flashbangs? Alexandria asked. Better. Magnesium flares. Burn at 3,000 degrees. Won't kill them, but they'll be blind and deaf for a few minutes. Perfect. Let's move. They filed out the back door. Wyatt and Boone first, sweeping for threats. Then Reed, supported by Dash and Flint. Sterling's wheelchair was all-terrain, modified with oversized wheels that could handle rough ground. He moved himself, fast and efficient. Knox came next, then Magnus, then Thaddeus. Alexandria rolled out last, her wheelchair designed for mobility, but not for desert terrain. She made it 20 feet before the wheels bogged down in loose sand. Damn it! Knox was there immediately. Ma'am, I'll carry you. The hell you will. I'm not leaving my chair. Ma'am, I said no. She looked at her chair, looked at the gully 200 yards ahead, did the math. She couldn't make it, not in the chair, not in this terrain, but she could make it on her hands. Alexandria dropped from the chair to the ground, started pulling herself forward. Her arms were strong, strengthened by 3 years of wheelchair use and a lifetime of carrying wounded soldiers. Ma'am, you can't, Knox started. Watch me. She pulled herself across the sand, steady, methodical, the same way she'd pulled herself across 40 different battlefields in 40 different countries. Behind her, Magnus grabbed the wheelchair, collapsed it, threw it over his shoulder. They moved toward the gully, 70 yards, 60, 50. Behind them, the house erupted. Magnus's traps triggered all at once. Magnesium flares ignited with a sound like thunder. White light flooded the desert, bright enough to turn night into noon. Shouting, confusion. The attackers had breached the house expecting resistance and found pyrotechnics instead. The group made it to the gully, dropped into cover. Knox and Thaddeus pulled Alexandria down into the depression. Magnus set up her wheelchair. They waited. Above them, on the desert floor, the house burned with chemical fire. The attackers would be disoriented, angry, but not stopped. How long until they regroup? Alexandria asked. Sterling checked his tablet. 5 minutes, maybe less. Then we keep moving. They traveled through the gully, using the natural terrain for cover. Reed was struggling now, breathing hard, blood seeping through his shirt, but he kept moving. 15 minutes later, they emerged onto the highway. Knox's vehicle was waiting, driven remotely by one of the young Marines who'd evacuated earlier. They piled in. Knox drove, fast, away from the safe house, away from the burning magnesium, away from whoever had come to kill them. Alexandria sat in the back, Reed beside her. She checked his wound, still bleeding but not critical. How you doing, Private? Been better, ma'am. You're alive. That's better than 4 of your unit. Hard words, but true. Reed nodded, accepting them. They drove for 20 minutes before Knox spoke. Where to, ma'am? Alexandria had been thinking about this. They needed somewhere secure, somewhere the attackers wouldn't look, somewhere with resources. And suddenly, she knew exactly where. VA hospital, she said. The old one on 8th Street, the one they've been trying to shut down. Why there? Because it's full of old veterans who remember what loyalty means. Because it has medical facilities. Because nobody pays attention to it anymore. She paused. And because the people hunting us won't think to look in the place society's been ignoring for 50 years. Knox nodded slowly. It might work. It will work. 30 minutes later, they pulled into the parking lot of the San Diego VA hospital. The building was old, worn, forgotten. Budget cuts had reduced staff. Half the wings were closed. But inside, veterans still gathered, still found community, still remembered what it meant to serve. Alexandria rolled through the doors and every eye turned to her. She didn't announce herself, didn't need to. Within an hour, word had spread. Alexandria Kincaid was back, and she needed help. By midnight, they had 40 volunteers, all veterans, all over 60, all ready to protect one of their own. The old guard was rising. And whoever was hunting Sawyer Reed was about to learn what happened when you threaten the people old soldiers had sworn to protect. The San Diego VA hospital hadn't been state-of-the-art in 20 years. Budget cuts had stripped it down to skeleton staff and bare-bones operations. Half the building sat empty, waiting for demolition orders that never quite came through. But what it lacked in funding, it made up for in something else entirely. Memory. Every scarred wall remembered soldiers who'd passed through. Every worn floor tile had supported the weight of men and women who'd given pieces of themselves to distant wars. The building itself seemed to hold the accumulated determination of generations who'd refused to quit. Alexandria rolled to the entrance at 1 in the morning. The night shift nurse, a woman in her 50s named Martha, who'd seen 30 years at this hospital, looked up from her desk. Their eyes met. Martha stood slowly. Alexandria Kincaid. Hello, Martha. Heard you got out 3 years ago. Heard you were trying to disappear. I was. Didn't work. Martha looked past Alexandria to the group behind her. 7 old men, various states of wear and injury, 1 active duty SEAL, and a bleeding 19-year-old private being supported by 2 of the old-timers. Trouble? Martha asked. The worst kind. Martha nodded once, picked up her phone, didn't call security, didn't call administration. She called the night janitor, an old Marine named Earl who'd been cleaning this hospital for 15 years and knew every veteran who walked through its doors. Earl arrived 3 minutes later, 71 years old, shoulders still broad despite the years. He looked at Alexandria, looked at Reed bleeding through his shirt, looked at the determined faces of the 7 men. What do you need? Earl asked. A place to work, a place to defend, and people who remember what loyalty means. Earl smiled. It was a hard smile, earned through years of being overlooked and underestimated. Follow me. He led them through corridors that were technically closed, past rooms marked for renovation that would never come, down to the basement level where the old surgical suites used to be, back when this hospital did trauma care instead of just managing chronic conditions. The rooms were dusty but intact, old equipment covered in sheets, gurneys that hadn't moved in a decade, but the bones were good. The infrastructure was solid. This'll work, Alexandria said. Earl nodded. I'll spread the word. Give me 2 hours. He left. The group moved into the largest suite, clearing dust, checking equipment, establishing their position. Flint got Reed onto a gurney, started proper wound care. The bleeding was steady, but not critical. The kid had been lucky. The bullet had missed major organs, just torn through muscle. You're going to need stitches, Flint said, and antibiotics, and about 3 days of bed rest. Can't do 3 days, Reed muttered through gritted teeth. Then you'll do what you can and hope your body keeps up. While Flint worked, the others transformed the space, not into a hospital room, into a command center. Sterling set up his tablets, accessing every security camera in a 3-mile radius through methods that were probably illegal, but definitely effective. Thaddeus and Boone mapped sightlines, marked defensible positions, identified every entrance and exit. Wyatt and Magnus discussed perimeter security, what they could rig with limited supplies, how to make this forgotten basement into a fortress. Dash inventoried medical supplies, pulling from hospital stock that technically wasn't theirs to take, but that Martha had quietly authorized. Knox made phone calls, quiet conversations with people he trusted, trying to identify who'd attacked the safe house, who was compromised, how deep the conspiracy ran. And Alexandria sat in the center of it all, mind working through scenarios, contingencies, the mathematics of survival. An hour passed. Then Earl returned. He wasn't alone. Behind him came veterans, not young men, not active duty, old men mostly, some women too, all of them past retirement age, all of them moving with the particular care of people whose bodies had been used hard and put away damaged. They came in 1s and 2s, quietly, no announcements, no fanfare. a 73-year-old woman named Helen who'd been an Army nurse in Desert Storm. She walked with a cane, but her eyes were sharp. A 68-year-old man named Marcus, who'd lost an arm in Mogadishu, but could still shoot better with one hand than most people could with two. A 70-year-old named Patricia, wheelchair-bound from a parachute accident in Kosovo, who'd been a logistics coordinator and could organize chaos into order. They kept coming, 40 in total. 40 veterans who'd heard that one of their own needed help and had simply shown up. No questions about the mission, no demands for explanation, just the simple understanding that when a veteran called, you answered. Alexandria looked at them. 40 faces, weathered and worn. 40 people society had written off as past their prime, no longer relevant, quietly fading away. 40 people who were about to prove society very, very wrong. "Thank you for coming," she said simply. Helen spoke up, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to managing chaos. "Alexandria Kincaid, we've heard the stories. You're the medic who never lost a patient if there was any way to save them." "I lost plenty," Alexandria said. "Just fought like hell for the ones I could keep. That's why we're here, to fight like hell." Helen gestured to the group behind her. "We're old, we're broken. Half of us can barely walk, but we're not useless, not dead, not done." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled veterans. "What do you need?" Marcus asked. Alexandria looked at Knox. He pulled up a photo on his phone, showed it to the group. "This is Private Sawyer Reed, 19 years old. He has evidence of a conspiracy involving defense contractors, Pentagon officials, and congressional staffers. $3 billion in fraudulent spending, 52 people involved." Knox swiped to the next photo. "These people want him dead. They've already killed 4 members of his unit, tried to kill him twice more. They have resources, training, and they're not going to stop." Another swipe. Security footage from the safe house attack. 6 figures in tactical gear, moving with professional precision. "They'll find us eventually," Knox continued. "When they do, they'll come hard. We need to be ready." Patricia wheeled forward. "What's the timeline?" "Hours, maybe. They know we can't go far. Reed's wounded. We're limited in mobility. They'll be sweeping every possible location." "Will they think to look here?" Helen asked. "Eventually, but not first. This place is off their radar, forgotten, which gives us time to prepare." Sterling spoke up from his position at the tablets. "I've got eyes on every approach road, security feeds from traffic cameras within 2 miles. If they come, we'll see them." "How do we defend this position?" Marcus asked, the tactical question automatic. Thaddeus stepped forward. "This basement has 3 access points: main stairs, service elevator, and emergency exit on the north side. We can bottleneck them, force them to come through kill zones." "We're not killing anyone if we can avoid it," Alexandria said firmly. "These are Americans, even if they're corrupt. We disable, detain, defend, but we don't execute." "They won't extend us the same courtesy," Boone pointed out. "I know, but we hold to a different standard. That's what makes us different from them." The assembled veterans nodded. They understood. The rules of engagement didn't change just because the enemy wore the same flag. For the next 3 hours, they worked. Patricia organized supply lines, food, water, medical equipment, everything they might need for an extended defense. Helen coordinated communication, established a phone tree, ensured everyone knew their role, created redundancy in case key people went down. Marcus and several other combat veterans established firing positions. Not to kill, Alexandria had been clear about that, but to control, to suppress, to make any attack costly enough that their enemies would think twice. Earl and the hospital staff quietly moved critical patients to other wings, cleared the area, made sure no innocent people would be caught in the crossfire. And Alexandria worked with Reed. The young private sat on the gurney, his wound freshly stitched and bandaged. Color was returning to his face, but his eyes held something else: guilt. Survivor's remorse. The weight of being the only one who made it out. "Tell me about your unit," Alexandria said quietly. Reed looked at her. "Ma'am? Your unit, the 4 who died. Tell me about them." "Why?" "Because they're not just statistics. They were people, and you carry them now. So tell me." Reed's throat worked. "Corporal Davies. He was from Ohio. 23. Getting married when he got home. He died first. Took 3 rounds before he could even raise his weapon." Alexandria listened. "Private Jennings, 20 years old. Kid was going to be a doctor. Pre-med before he enlisted. He bled out trying to help Davies." The names kept coming, each one a life, each one a future that ended in a valley that they were never supposed to be in. "And Sergeant Morrison," Reed finished, his voice breaking. "He was 31, 2 kids. He covered our retreat, stood in the open and drew fire so I could run. Last thing he said was, 'Tell my kids their daddy loved them.'" Tears ran down Reed's face now. He didn't wipe them away. "I should have died with them," he whispered. "No," Alexandria's voice was hard. "You should have lived for them, which is what you're doing." "I ran. You survived. There's a difference. Morrison told you to run because your life mattered, because the intelligence you carried mattered, because bringing down the people who killed your unit mattered. How do you live with it, the ones you couldn't save?" Alexandria was quiet for a long moment. "You don't forget them. You carry them, and you make damn sure their deaths weren't meaningless." She leaned forward. "Your unit died because someone betrayed them. Someone changed coordinates and sent them into a kill box. You have the proof. You testify, those people go to prison. Your unit's deaths expose corruption that's been killing soldiers for 15 years. And if I die before I can testify, then I failed my mission, and I don't fail missions." Reed looked at her, really looked, saw the scars on her arms, the determined set of her jaw, the absolute certainty in her eyes. "You really think you can keep me alive?" "Private, I kept 247 people alive in situations worse than this. You're going to be 248. A hint of a smile touched Reed's face. "Yes, ma'am." Sterling's voice cut through the moment. "We've got movement. 3 vehicles, high-end SUVs. No plates. They're stopping 2 blocks away." Everyone froze. Alexandria rolled to Sterling's position, looked at the tablet feeds. 3 black SUVs, tinted windows, stopped in a parking lot 2 blocks from the hospital. "How many?" she asked. "Can't tell. At least 12, probably more." Knox moved beside her. "They found us faster than expected. Or they knew exactly where to look." Alexandria's mind raced. "Someone told them. Someone who knew we were here." "Who knew?" "Everyone in this room." She looked around at the 40 veterans, plus hospital staff, plus anyone watching security feeds. "You think we have a traitor?" "I think we have someone compromised. Not willingly, but these people have resources. They could have phones tapped, emails monitored." Sterling was already working, checking for signal intercepts, any phone that's made calls in the last hour. "Too late," Thaddeus said from his position near the stairs. "They're already moving." Through the security feeds they watched, 14 figures in tactical gear emerging from the SUVs, moving in coordinated teams, professional, experienced, and leading them was someone familiar. Knox went very still. "No." Alexandria looked at him. "You know him?" "That's my brother, Colonel Drake Ashford." The man on the screen was 50 years old, military bearing, moving with the confidence of someone who'd spent 30 years in special operations. He wore civilian tactical gear, but everything about him screamed military. "Your brother is leading the hit squad?" Alexandria said. Knox's face had gone pale. "He retired 3 years ago, went private sector, defense contracting. I thought he was just consulting." "He's consulting, all right, for the people trying to kill us." The tactical team spread out. 6 moved toward the main entrance. 4 toward the service elevator. 4 more circled to the emergency exit. They were going to hit all 3 access points simultaneously. Positions, Alexandria said quietly. The 40 veterans moved. Not fast. Many of them couldn't move fast anymore, but efficiently. Taking the positions they'd prepared. Thaddeus at the main stairs with Marcus and 6 others. Boone at the service elevator with Helen and 5 more. Wyatt at the emergency exit with Patricia and the remaining defenders. Alexandria stayed in the center with Sterling, coordinating. Knox stood nearby, weapon drawn, face conflicted. "Can you fight against your brother?" Alexandria asked quietly. "He made his choice. I made mine." "That's not what I asked." Knox looked at her. "He's my brother, but he's also a traitor. And I've spent my entire career understanding that the mission comes before blood." "Good, because in about 2 minutes, we're going to need that clarity." Sterling's fingers flew across his tablet. "I'm looping security feeds to show empty corridors. They'll think we're not watching. Might buy us a few seconds of confusion. Every second counts." The tactical team reached the access points. Breaching charges appeared. Professional grade, military surplus. "They're going to blow the doors," Thaddeus reported over the radio. "Recommend we fall back from immediate blast zone." "Negative," Alexandria said. "Hold positions. The blast will disorient them too. We use that moment." "Ma'am, with respect, these are fragmentation charges. Anyone close will be shredded." "Then we're not close. We're around corners, behind cover, waiting for them to come through smoke and confusion into our prepared positions." A pause. Then Thaddeus's voice, grim with respect. "Roger that." The charges detonated. 3 explosions, perfectly timed. The doors blew inward. Smoke filled the stairwells and corridors. The tactical team moved in. Fast, aggressive, expecting light resistance or none at all. They got neither. They got something they weren't prepared for. They got old people who'd spent lifetimes learning how to survive. At the main stairs, the first 4 operators came through smoke and found themselves in a corridor lined with veterans. Not shooting, not attacking, just standing there, blocking the path with their bodies. The operators hesitated. These were old men and women, unarmed, standing calm. That hesitation cost them. From side corridors, Marcus and his team moved. Not to kill, to disable. They used tactics older than any tech these contractors had trained with. Simple physics, leverage, momentum used against itself. The first operator went down with a dislocated shoulder. The second took a cane across the back of his knees. The third found himself suddenly on the ground with a 70-year-old man's knee on his chest and his own weapon in someone else's hands. The fourth managed to key his radio. "Main stairs is compromised. Multiple hostiles. They're—" Helen hit him with a bedpan, the old-fashioned metal kind that rang like a bell. He went down hard. At the service elevator, Boone had set up differently. The elevator doors opened, and the operators found themselves looking down a hallway that seemed empty. They advanced carefully, weapons up, checking corners. That's when the lights went out. Earl had killed the power to that section. Darkness descended. The operators switched to night vision, green glow illuminating their path. But Boone and his team didn't need night vision. They knew this hospital, knew every inch of it, knew where to move in the dark. They attacked from positions the operators didn't expect. Low, high, from side rooms they thought were clear. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't clean. But in 90 seconds, 4 more operators were down, zip-tied with medical restraints, weapons confiscated. At the emergency exit, Wyatt faced the third team. 4 operators, including Colonel Drake Ashford. Drake came through the door first, weapon ready, eyes scanning. He saw Patricia in her wheelchair blocking the corridor and smiled. "This is what they're using for defense? Old people in wheelchairs?" Patricia looked at him. "I was coordinating logistics when you were still learning to tie your boots, Colonel, and I've forgotten more about tactics than you'll ever learn." Drake raised his weapon. "Move or I drop you where you sit." No, you won't, because you're not here to kill civilians. You're here to kill one specific person, and you need to get through us first. Drake's finger tightened on the trigger. That's when Wyatt attacked. 70 years old, missing 3 fingers, moving like violence personified. He came from a side room, covered the 15 feet in 3 seconds, and hit Drake like a freight train. They went down together. Drake was younger, fitter, better equipped. Wyatt had rage on his side. The rage of a man who'd spent his entire life defending what was right and was now facing someone who'd betrayed everything the uniform meant. They rolled, fought. Drake tried to bring his weapon to bear. Wyatt's hand, the one with only 7 fingers, clamped on Drake's wrist with a grip strengthened by decades of compensation. The weapon fell. Drake headbutted Wyatt. Blood spurted from the old man's nose, but he didn't let go. Patricia rolled her wheelchair forward, not fast, deliberately. She pulled something from her lap, a taser borrowed from hospital security. She jabbed it into Drake's thigh. 50,000 volts. Drake convulsed. Wyatt rolled clear. By the time Drake could move again, he was zip-tied to a gurney, with Patricia watching him from her wheelchair, and Wyatt standing over him with Drake's own weapon. "Checkmate, Colonel," Patricia said calmly. The remaining operators saw their leader down and retreated, back through the emergency exit, regrouping, reassessing. In the command center, Sterling watched the feeds. All 3 teams repelled. 14 operators, 11 disabled, 3 retreated. Alexandria allowed herself a small smile. Status of our people? Thaddeus has a sprained wrist. Helen has a black eye. Wyatt's nose is broken. Everyone else is functional. Casualties on their side? 4 with broken bones, 7 with concussions. All alive, all stable. Good. Get Flint to treat them. Even enemies deserve medical care. Knox stood nearby, staring at the feed showing his brother zip-tied to a gurney. "I need to talk to him," Knox said. "Not yet. First we secure the area, then you talk." But Knox was already moving, walking toward the emergency exit with the determination of someone who needed answers. Alexandria followed in her wheelchair, moving as fast as the terrain allowed. They found Drake in the corridor, still restrained, Patricia watching him with clinical detachment. Knox stood over his brother. They looked alike. Same nose, same jaw, same eyes. But those eyes held different things now. "Why?" Knox asked simply. Drake laughed, bitter. "Why? You really don't know? 30 years in service, Knox. 30 years of watching contractors get rich, while we got thanks and a pension that barely covers rent. I got tired of being the only one not cashing in. So you sold out your oath, sold out soldiers. I provided a service, intelligence, coordination, logistics. I didn't kill anyone. You killed Reed's entire unit when you changed those coordinates. Collateral damage. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time." Knox's hand tightened on his weapon. "They were in the wrong place because you put them there. And they died doing what soldiers do. At least their deaths funded better equipment for the ones who came after." The rationalization was so smooth, so practiced, that it was almost believable. Almost. Alexandria rolled forward. "How much did they pay you?" Drake looked at her. "Who the hell are you?" "The person keeping Sawyer Reed alive. How much was 4 lives worth?" $2 million up front, another 3 when the evidence was destroyed. So you value each life at about $1.25 million. Good to know what treason goes for these days. It's not treason, it's business. This is how the world works. Defense budgets are bloated. Money gets allocated. People like me make sure it goes to the right places. Right places being your bank account, among others. Knox knelt down to eye level with his brother. "How many, Drake? How many missions did you compromise? How many soldiers died so you could get paid?" Drake's smile faded. For the first time, something like shame flickered across his face. "I don't know. Ballpark. Maybe 30 missions over 15 years. How many casualties? I don't keep count. Knox stood up. His face was stone. I keep count. I remember every name of every soldier who died under my command. Every name, every face. And you don't even know how many you killed. They were soldiers. They signed up for the risk. They signed up to fight America's enemies, not to be betrayed by America's defenders. Drake had no answer for that. Sterling's voice crackled over the radio. Ma'am, we've got a problem. The 3 operators who retreated, they're on the phone, calling in reinforcements. How many more? Alexandria asked. Unknown, but traffic cameras show 6 more vehicles heading this direction. ETA? 15 minutes. Alexandria did the math. They'd repelled 14. If 6 more vehicles came, that could be another 24 operators. With everyone already injured, already exhausted, they couldn't hold against that many. They needed to change the game. Sterling, can you get me in touch with General Webb? He's sedated, ma'am. Doctor's orders. Wake him up. I need authorization for something. What? To go public. To break this wide open before they can kill us all to hide it. 5 minutes later, General Garrison Webb's voice came through on a secure line. Weak, morphine slurred, but conscious. Reaper, status. We're about to be overrun, sir. I need authorization to release the evidence. Make it public. Force their hand. You'll destroy your own credibility. They'll claim you stole classified information. I don't care about credibility. I care about keeping Reed alive long enough to testify. A long pause. Breathing on the line, labored and wet. Do it, Webb said finally. Release everything. I'll take the heat. My career's over anyway. Thank you, sir. Reaper, one more thing. Sir, you're the finest soldier I ever served with. It's been an honor. The line went dead. Alexandria looked at Sterling. Do it. Upload everything to every news outlet, every congressional oversight committee, every inspector general in the Department of Defense. Flood the zone. Sterling's fingers flew. This is going to cause an earthquake, ma'am. Good. Let it. Maybe the aftershocks will shake some truth loose. 3 minutes later, the story broke. Every major news outlet received an encrypted file. Names, dates, dollar amounts. 52 people involved in 15 years of fraud. Testimony from a surviving witness. Evidence of murder to cover it up. The story went live simultaneously across every platform. And in the basement of a forgotten VA hospital, Alexandria watched the feeds as the world learned what corruption looked like when it wore a uniform. Knox's phone rang, his commanding officer, shouting, demanding to know what the hell was happening. Knox looked at Alexandria. She nodded. Sir, this is Commander Knox Ashford. I'm currently defending a material witness against a conspiracy involving 52 individuals in the defense procurement chain. My brother, Colonel Drake Ashford, is among the conspirators and is currently in custody. I'm requesting immediate backup, medical assistance, and JAG representation. More shouting on the other end. Yes, sir, I understand this is irregular, but we're about to be overrun by private contractors attempting to eliminate the witness. If you want this case to hold up in court, you need to get people here, now. He gave the address, ended the call. Help's coming, he said. Maybe 20 minutes. The reinforcements will be here in 15, Sterling said. Then we hold for 5 more minutes than we think we can. The veterans prepared for the second assault. Exhausted, injured, but determined. This was what they'd trained for their entire lives. Not the combat itself, but the refusal to quit when quitting was the easier choice. The 6 vehicles arrived. Doors opened. This time, not 14 operators, 28. Better armed, better coordinated, led by someone who understood that the first assault had failed because they'd underestimated their enemy. Alexandria watched them deploy on the security feeds. They're not coming in the same way, she said. They've learned. So what do? Knox asked. They isolate us. Cut power, cut communications, then wait us out. We can't defend indefinitely. We have injured, limited supplies, limited mobility. So we're trapped. We're defended. There's a difference. The power cut out. Emergency lights kicked in, casting everything in red. Communications went dead. Phones, internet, everything. Sterling cursed. They've got a jammer, military grade. We're dark. Can you beat it? Not from here. I'd need line of sight to their equipment. Then we get line of sight. Alexandria looked around at her defenders. 40 veterans, half of them injured now, all of them exhausted. And 28 fresh operators outside, waiting for them to crack. She made a decision. We don't wait for them to come to us. We take the fight to them. Everyone stared at her. Ma'am, we barely held them off when they came to us, Thaddeus said. If we go out there, if we stay here, we're sitting ducks waiting for slaughter. They've cut our power and communications. Help is coming, but they'll make sure it doesn't arrive in time. Our only chance is to disrupt their plan. Make them react to us instead of us reacting to them. How? Knox asked. Alexandria smiled. It was not a kind smile. We're in a hospital. They want to kill one patient. So we give them 300 patients to sort through. Understanding dawned on Helen's face. We evacuate the building, force them to search every person to find Reed. Exactly. And while they're searching, help arrives. They moved fast. Every veteran who could still walk spread through the hospital, waking patients, helping staff evacuate. Fire alarm pulled. Emergency protocols initiated. 300 patients, various states of mobility, began moving toward the exits. And hidden among them, in a wheelchair pushed by Flint, wearing a hospital gown and an oxygen mask, was Sawyer Reed. The operators outside found themselves facing not 40 defenders, but 300 civilians flooding out of the building. Old people, sick people, hospital staff, all of them moving in different directions, creating chaos. They couldn't shoot into that crowd. Too public, too many witnesses, too many cameras. So they watched, searched, tried to spot their target in the sea of faces. But Alexandria had planned for that too. She dressed 12 young men in similar hospital gowns, similar builds, similar coloring, each pushed in wheelchairs by veterans who moved with the crowd. The operators split up, trying to check each wheelchair. But there were so many, too many, and by the time they realized the trick, police had arrived. Fire department, ambulances, drawn by the fire alarm and the reports of armed men outside a VA hospital. The operators had to retreat, couldn't risk exposure, couldn't risk being identified. They vanished into the night, professional to the end. Alexandria watched from the entrance, Reed safe beside her, as law enforcement secured the area. Knox stood nearby, phone finally working again, coordinating with his chain of command. They're sending a full security detail, he said. Military police, JAG investigators. Reed will be in protective custody by dawn. Good. You did it, ma'am. You kept him alive. We kept him alive. All of us. Thaddeus limped over, his arm in an improvised sling. Heard from Webb? Alexandria shook her head. Not since the call. We should check on him. They went back inside, through corridors now filled with federal agents and military police, up to the 4th floor, to Webb's room. The machines had gone quiet. General Garrison Webb had died 20 minutes ago. Peacefully, the nurse said. He'd watched the news break on the television in his room, watched as the conspiracy he'd spent his last weeks fighting began to unravel. Then he'd closed his eyes and let go. Alexandria sat beside his bed, holding his cold hand. Mission accomplished, sir, she whispered. Reed's alive. The story's out. They're going to pay for what they did. Webb, of course, didn't answer, but Alexandria imagined he'd be satisfied. He'd spent 40 years in service, ended it by exposing corruption that had killed soldiers for 15 years. That was a legacy worth dying for. 6 months later, Alexandria stood in front of a classroom at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The sign on the door read, Kincaid Combat Medic Institute. 30 students sat in front of her. Mixed ages, mixed backgrounds, some active duty, some veterans returning for advanced training. 3 of them wore street clothes instead of uniforms. Colt Brennan sat in the front row taking notes. His neck tattoos were still visible, but everything else about him had changed. Focused, determined, hungry to learn. Riker Maddox sat beside him, reading ahead in the textbook with the intensity of someone trying to make up for lost time. Finn O'Hara sat in the back, quieter than the others, but his eyes never left Alexandria when she spoke. The 3 men from the bar had shown up at her door 3 months after the incident, asked if she'd train them, said they wanted to learn how to save lives instead of mock the people who did. She'd said yes, because everyone deserved a second chance, because redemption was possible, because the best way to honor the 247 people she'd saved was to teach others to save 247 more. Alexandria stood at the front of the class, her wheelchair positioned where everyone could see her. They told me at 62, in a wheelchair, I was done, she said. I told them I was just getting started. The students listened. Age is not a weakness. It's proof you survived when others didn't. And survival is the ultimate skill. She paused, letting that sink in. This course will be hard. You'll be pushed beyond what you think you can handle. You'll face scenarios that have no right answers, only least bad choices. You'll learn that saving lives is messy and painful, and sometimes you do everything right and people still die. Another pause. But you'll also learn that there's no greater purpose than standing between someone and death. No greater calling than keeping another person breathing when everything says they should stop. She looked around the room, saw the determination in their eyes, the hunger to matter, to contribute, to be part of something larger than themselves. 247 people are alive because I refused to quit, because I learned how to think under pressure, adapt under fire, and never, ever accept that death wins. Colt raised his hand. Ma'am, can we learn to be like that? Alexandria smiled. No, you can't be like me. You can be like yourself. But you can learn the skills. You can develop the mindset. You can become the kind of person who saves lives instead of taking them. She rolled forward, closer to the class. And when you do, when you save your first life under impossible conditions, you'll understand something. You'll understand that age and ability and background don't matter. What matters is training, determination, the refusal to quit when quitting is easier. The class session began. Alexandria taught them about triage, about field medicine, about making impossible choices in impossible moments. During a break, Knox appeared in the doorway. He'd been promoted to captain after his testimony helped bring down the conspiracy. Now he split his time between active duty and teaching at the institute. Ma'am, got a minute? They stepped outside. The North Carolina sun was warm, the air heavy with pine. Webb's posthumous promotion came through, Knox said. 4 stars. And they're naming the new medical training center after him. He'd hate that. He always said buildings should be named after enlisted, not officers. They're also naming it after someone else. A co-dedication. Knox handed her a document. She read it. The Webb Kincaid Center for Advanced Combat Medicine. Alexandria stared at the paper. Her name. On a building. Permanent. A legacy that would outlive her by decades. I don't need this, she said quietly. It's not about need. It's about recognition. 247 lives, ma'am. That's not counting the ones your students will save, or the ones their students will save. You started something that's going to echo for generations. She folded the paper, tucked it into her pocket. How's your brother? She asked, changing the subject. Knox's face darkened. 30 years in Leavenworth, no parole. He took a plea deal, testified against the others. 52 arrests, 41 convictions so far, $3 billion in recovered funds. And you? I visit him once a month. Don't know why. Maybe because he's still my brother, even if he's also a traitor." He paused. "He asked about you last time." "What did he want to know?" "He asked how you did it, how you kept Reed alive with 40 old veterans against trained operators. He said his team should have won. Superior numbers, superior equipment, superior training." "What did you tell him?" "I told him he forgot the most important factor. You had something his team didn't." "What's that?" "Purpose. His people were there for money. Yours were there because it was right. And when everything else is equal, purpose beats profit every single time." Alexandria nodded. That sounded about right. They stood in comfortable silence, watching students pass by. Young faces, old faces, all of them here to learn how to save lives. "Webb would be proud," Knox said finally. "Webb is dead. The living don't need pride from the dead. They need to be worthy of what the dead fought for." "Are we worthy?" Alexandria looked at him, saw the doubt in his eyes, the weight of having a traitor for a brother, the constant question of whether he'd missed signs that could have prevented it all. "You stood between Reed and death when your own brother was pulling the trigger. You chose oath over blood. Yeah, Captain, you're worthy." Knox nodded, straightened his shoulders, carried the weight a little easier. Inside the classroom, the bell rang. Students filed back in. Alexandria rolled back to her position at the front. "Let's continue," she said. "Today we're covering arterial bleeds under fire. I'm going to tell you about a mission in Afghanistan, 2021, about a choice I made that cost me my legs but saved a man's life." The students leaned forward, ready to learn. "And then you're going to practice making that same choice, over and over, until it's not a choice anymore, until it's reflex, until keeping people alive is as natural as breathing." She began the lesson, her voice steady, her hands demonstrating techniques on a training dummy, her mind back in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in 100 different places where she'd stood between someone and death. The golden trident sat on her desk, worn smooth, a reminder of oaths taken and kept. Outside, the sun moved across the sky. Time passed. The world turned. And in a classroom at Fort Bragg, an old woman in a wheelchair taught young people how to save lives, how to be worthy of the uniform, how to understand that service never ends, it just changes form, how to know that the best revenge against time and injury and age is to refuse to become useless, to refuse to fade, to refuse to quit, to keep fighting in whatever way you can, for as long as you can, because there's always someone who needs you, always someone worth saving, always one more mission. Alexandria Kincaid looked at her students and smiled. She was 62 years old, in a wheelchair, gray-haired and scarred, and she was just getting started.